Welcome back to Literary Leap. We shall continue with our exploration of one of the most gripping scenes in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. In this pivotal moment, we witness Mark Antony's masterful control of words, where he transforms himself from a loyal mourner to a cunning manipulator. Antony confronts the conspirators not with open hostility, but with subtle defiance cloaked in grief and respect. So let's break down the lines, unravel the emotions, and discover the brilliance of Shakespeare's portrayal of loyalty, betrayal, and political maneuvering in this iconic moment. Antony begins with a heartfelt lament over Caesar's body. He expresses disbelief that Caesar, once the most powerful man, has been reduced to a lifeless corpse. So we see the usage of rhetorical questions which emphasize Antony's grief and disbelief. We also see a contrast being drawn between Caesar's greatness with the usage of words like conquests, glories, triumphs, spoils, with his current state, this little measure. Now, Antony cautiously questions the conspirators' motives, implying that they might kill him next. The term let blood uses imagery of animal sacrifice, equating their action to a ritualistic purge. So, Antony declares his readiness to die, considering no better time or weapon than those that ended Caesar's life. So we see irony over here. While seeming submissive, Antony subtly elevates Caesar's nobility and questions the morality of the conspirators. The swords are described as made rich, glorifying Caesar's blood. Now, Antony dares the conspirators to kill him while their hands are still stained with Caesar's fresh blood. The imagery of reek and smoke suggests the immediacy or proximity of the murder to where they are standing at present. Now, in figures of speech, we see purpled hands. They symbolize guilt and violence. Now, the irony here is that Antony pretends to be submissive, yet his words carry an accusatory tone. Mark Antony further goes on to say that even if he could live for 1,000 years, he would never find a better moment or way to die than this one. So he believes it would be an honor to die here near Caesar and at the hands of these choice and master spirits. That means the great and influential leaders of their time, referring, of course, to the conspirators. Essentially, he is expressing a mix of grief for Caesar and a subtle hint of manipulation as he flatters the assassins while maybe hiding his true feelings. Upon hearing Antony's words, Brutus reassures Antony, acknowledging their act appears brutal but argues it was done out of necessity for Rome's welfare. He goes on to emphasize that Antony sees only their actions, not their intentions. So the hands over here, the word hands represents the conspirators as agents of action. And we see a contrast between appearance, bloody and cruel, and intention. That means the feeling for Rome. Now, Brutus explains that their hearts are filled with pity for Rome's suffering, and this pity led them to kill Caesar. The phrase fire drives out fire suggests they used one destructive force to counteract another. So, fire drives out fire is a metaphor to justify their actions. And we see the reputation of the word pity, which emphasize their supposed noble motives. Now, Brutus assures Mark Antony that he is not in danger. He says that their swords which killed Caesar are now harmless. He uses the term have leaden points in order to tell that they are harmless when it comes to Antony. Their actions, though powerful and destructive, that means he expresses it through the term in strength of malice, were done with a sense of justice, not personal hatred. So Brutus tells Antony that they welcome him with love, respect, and the warmth of friendship like brothers. This is Brutus's way of calming Antony and convincing him of their good intentions. Adding to it, Cassius tells Antony that he will have as much influence as anyone else in deciding who will take important positions in the new government. This is kind of meant to assure Antony that he will be respected and included in their plans. So Brutus then asks Antony to be patient and allow them to first calm the crowd, which is in a state of panic and confusion. After that, Brutus promises to explain why he, who loved Caesar, still chose to participate in his assassination. So this shows Brutus's belief that their actions were justified and for the good of Rome. So Antony responds by saying he has no doubt about their wisdom. This is actually a polite and cautious reply, as Antony is concealing his true feelings about Caesar's murder. Then, as a gesture of reconciliation, he shakes hands with each of them, one by one, including Brutus, Cassius, Decius, Metellus, Cinna, Casca, and Trebonius. Antony speaks politely to each conspirator and even calls them gentlemen and pretends to make peace. Now, Antony's handshake is a calculated move to disguise his anger and plot revenge. Emphasizing each conspirator's name shows Antony's calm but deliberate acknowledgement of his enemies, like he does not want to miss out on any conspirator when the time comes to avenge Caesar's assassination. However, Antony reveals his inner conflict. He feels that by shaking the hands of Caesar's murder, he is putting himself in a difficult position. And he feels that people may think of him in two negative ways, either as a coward for not opposing them or as a flatterer for pretending to be their friend. Now, Antony admits that he truly loved Caesar and he imagines Caesar's spirit watching him now. He believes that Caesar would feel even more sorrow than in death, seeing Antony making peace and shaking the hands of those who killed him right in front of Caesar's lifeless body. So Antony mourns Caesar, imagining his tears flowing as rapidly as Caesar's wounds that bleed. Now, he uses hyperbole where he says, had I as many eyes, which actually amplifies his sorrow. So, the vivid description of Caesar's bleeding wounds intensifies the tragedy. Antony says that it would be more appropriate for him to mourn Caesar than to pretend to be friends with his killers. He apologizes to Caesar's spirit for appearing to side with conspirators. He compares Caesar to a brave deer, a hart, that has been surrounded and hunted down by his enemies. He points out the place where Caesar fell and the assassins stand, their hands stained with Caesar's blood, signed in thy spoil. That is, hands stained with Caesar's blood, and their weapons soaked in his life, crimsoned in their lethe, with the lethe symbolizing the river of forgetfulness and death. Now, Antony extends the metaphor, saying that the world was like a forest to his dear, that means to Caesar. And Caesar was the very heart of that world. He laments that Caesar, like a noble deer, was struck down by many hunters, implying the conspirators, and now he lies dead. Now, here we see Cassius interrupts Antony. He does so because he is wary of Antony's emotional display and possible motives. However, Antony assures his loyalty but subtly demands justification for Caesar's murder, kind of planting doubt about their actions. Now, Antony tells the conspirators that he is their friend and that he loves them all. However, he says this on the condition that they explain their reasons for killing Caesar. Antony wants to know specifically what made Caesar so dangerous that the assassinators or the conspirators felt that they had to assassinate him. Now, Cassius begins by saying he does not blame Antony for speaking well of Caesar. However, he asks Antony directly if he plans to join their side and become one of their allies or if they should proceed without him. So Antony replies that he shook their hands as a sign of peace, but admits he was distracted by looking at Caesar's dead body. He says he is their friend, but on the condition that they explain why Caesar was considered dangerous enough to be killed. So Brutus responds by saying that killing Caesar was not a savage act. He assures Antony that their reasons were honorable and justified. He even claims that if Antony were Caesar's own son, he would still find their reasons acceptable. So Antony agrees that all he wants is to understand their reasons. Additionally, he asks for permission to take Caesar's body to the marketplace and give a speech during his funeral as a sign of his respect for Caesar. Brutus, of course, grants Antony this permission, showing his trust in Antony and belief that Antony will not cause trouble. Cassius, however, being Cassius, does not trust anyone, especially Mark Antony. So Cassius, speaking privately to Brutus, warns him not to let Antony speak at Caesar's funeral. He fears that Antony's words could stir up the emotions of the Roman people and turn them against the conspirators. But Brutus disagrees. He believes that by speaking first, he can explain why they killed Caesar and convince the people that it was for the good of Rome. He actually plans to make it clear that Antony is only speaking with their permission and that Caesar will be given proper burial rites. Brutus thinks this approach will work to their advantage and sees no harm at all in Antony's speech. Cassius, still doubtful, expresses his unease, saying he doesn't feel good about this decision. But anyway, he doesn't push further. He voices his unease about allowing Antony to speak because he foresees potential danger. Brutus, of course, disregards Cassius's fear and warning and gives Antony Caesar's body, allowing him to proceed with the funeral. So Brutus grants Antony permission to speak at Caesar's funeral but imposes strict conditions to avoid criticism of the conspirators. Brutus tells Antony that if he wants to speak at Caesar's funeral, he must follow certain conditions. Now, these conditions should be noted. Antony will only be allowed to speak after Brutus has addressed the crowd and explained why they killed Caesar. Antony must not blame the conspirators for Caesar's death, but must only speak good of Caesar. Antony must also use the same platform where Brutus will speak, ensuring that Brutus sets the tone for the funeral. Antony agrees to all the terms and assures Brutus that he wants nothing more than this opportunity. Brutus then instructs Antony to prepare Caesar's body and follow them to the marketplace. So here we see the contrast between Brutus's idealism and Antony's cunning. While Brutus believes in the justice of their actions, Antony prepares to manipulate the masses, setting the stage for the famous funeral oration. Themes of loyalty, betrayal, and rhetoric dominate, making this a turning point in the play. Now, after all the conspirators have left the scene, Antony begins by apologizing to Caesar's body for his outward show of civility towards the conspirators. He addresses Caesar's corpse as though it can hear him. He refers to Caesar as a bleeding piece of earth. Bleeding piece of earth here equates Caesar to a violated land symbolizing the ruin of Rome. He further dehumanizes or degrades the conspirators' deed while emphasizing Caesar's lifelessness. He calls the conspirators butchers, highlighting their brutal personalities. It also kind of shows his disdain towards the conspirators. Antony pays tribute to Caesar, calling him the greatest man to have lived in history. Tide of times refers to the passage of time. Now, Antony curses those who killed Caesar, and the phrase costly blood emphasizes Caesar's value to Rome. The word hand over here symbolizes the murderers. Now, Antony personifies Caesar's wounds as silent mouths pleading for justice, urging Antony to speak on their behalf. The description of the wounds as dumb mouths and ruby lips create a vivid image of Caesar's injuries. Now, next, Antony predicts chaos in Rome and all of Italy as a consequence of Caesar's assassination. This foreshadows the civil war that historically followed Caesar's death. Now, fierce civil strife emphasizes the intensity of the coming chaos. Antony envisions a time of such extreme violence that even the most horrific acts, like killing of infants, will become commonplace. He exaggerates the horrors to emphasize the devastation. When Antony says, all pity choked with custom of fell deeds, he means that the people's natural sense of pity or compassion has been choked or suppressed because they have grown accustomed to seeing cruel or evil actions. Fell deeds refer to evil or cruel actions. There will be so much violence, death, and bloodshed all around that the people's hearts would be hardened, making it difficult for them to feel shock or pity at such violence. Antony imagines Caesar's spirit seeking revenge, accompanied by Ati, the Greek goddess of discord. He metaphorically unleashes chaos by calling for the dogs of war, a phrase that symbolizes uncontrolled destruction. So, Ati symbolizes the divine wrath and chaos that Antony foresees. The metaphor dogs of war portrays war as feral and uncontrollable. Now, Antony foresees death and decay resulting from the murder, emphasizing the far reaching consequences of the act. Smell above the earth invokes a sense of decay and corruption. Just then, a servant enters. He serves Octavius. The servant sees the body of Caesar and is shocked and filled with grief at the sight of the fallen Caesar. Antony, of course, notices this and he speaks to the servant of Octavius, observing that grief is contagious. His genuine sorrow reinforces his loyalty to Caesar. When we say grief is contagious, it means that seeing one person or another person crying, one would also feel that same pain or sorrow. Beads of sorrow. This is a metaphor which likens tears to precious beads. Now, the servant informs Antony that Octavius is camped just 7 leagues, approximately 21 miles away from Rome that night. Antony tells the servant to hurry back to Octavius and inform him about the current situation in Rome. Antony describes Rome as a mourning and dangerous place where there is no safety for Octavius yet, indicating the chaos after Caesar's assassination. Now, Antony pauses and tells the messenger to wait a little longer before he leaves. Antony will take Caesar's body to the marketplace where he plans to give a speech to the people. Now, in his speech, he wants, or rather, Antony plans to gauge the public's reaction through his funeral speech, a pivotal moment that determines the conspirators' fate. He wants to see how the people react to Caesar's death and whether they will turn against the conspirators. Based on the crowd's response, Antony will then inform Octavius about the state of affairs in Rome. Finally, Antony asks the servant to help him carry Caesar's body and they exit together. So here we see Antony's transformation from a grieving loyalist to a vengeful strategist. His prophecy sets the stage for Rome's descent into chaos. Shakespeare masterfully uses language and imagery to convey Antony's emotional and intellectual depth while also foreshadowing the events to come. So, as we close this segment of Antony's lament, Shakespeare leaves us with the chilling weight of Antony's prophecy and the ominous promise of revenge. Antony, no longer the meek mourner, reveals the sharpness of his cunning and his deep loyalty to Caesar. What will unfold next as he addresses the Roman people in the marketplace? Will Antony's words spark the civil strife he so vividly envisions? Stay tuned as we unravel one of the most famous speeches in all of Shakespearean drama in the next episode of this journey into Julius Caesar.